Okay, so we're going to annotate a little bit more. Excuse my handwriting. I'm trying to do this from a really strange angle so that you can see it all. Okay, so we've gotten up to the point where Macbeth talks about Fleance's present being sort of venomous, and how Fleance will be able to get revenge on Macbeth, and that's what makes him so paranoid. Okay, so that's what makes Macbeth quite a paranoid person. So we then have Lady Macbeth start to discuss these things with Macbeth. She says, "My royal lord, you do not give the cheer, the feast is sold, that is not often vouched while 'tis a making. 'Tis given with welcome, to feed were best at home. From thence the source to meet is ceremony, meeting were bare without it." So what she's saying is you need to be quite jovial and bright for your guests. And basically what she's saying is that, you know, we'd prefer to be at home right now, but we have to sort of play up to this role as hosts of this feast. So she's telling Macbeth again to be quite deceptive. So she's telling him again to, sorry, my pen's having a bit of difficulty, there we go. She's telling him again to be deceptive, and she's telling him to act in a certain way around his guests. So then we see that it's Enter the Ghost of Banquo. Now this is really important that only Macbeth can see him. If you are going to forget that in your exam, then you need to write it down. Macbeth says, "Sweet remembrancer, now good digestion wait on appetite and health on both." So yes, okay, I'll sit down, I'll eat, it'll be fine. Lennox says, may it please your highness sit. So Lennox is telling him to sit down. "Here we now our country's honour roofed, were the graced person of our Banquo present, who may I rather challenge for unkindness than pity for mischance." Just so you know, the stand that I've got the camera on is in front of me, so sometimes it's a bit difficult to read this and write, so please bear with me if I stumble over some words. So what he's saying is all the noblemen are here, but then he actually talks about Banquo. So he says, but Banquo's not here. And he's making out that Banquo has betrayed him. So he says, who may I rather challenge for unkindness than pity for mischance. So actually, I'm upset, and I hope nothing bad has happened to him, but I don't think he should have promised to come if he wasn't going to come. So here, Macbeth is again being quite deceptive. He knows what's happened to Banquo. He knows what's going on. And there's this dramatic irony as well, because Macbeth has actually... we know that Macbeth's actually killed Banquo. So there's that dramatic irony there, and he's become very, very deceptive. Ross says, "His absence, sir, lays blame upon his promise. Please it your highness to grace us with your royal company." And Macbeth says, "The table's full." Lennox then says, "Here is a place reserved, sir." Macbeth says, "Where?" "Here, my good lord. What is it that moves your highness? Which of you hath done this?" Now, the reason that Macbeth can't see his place at the table is because Banquo's ghost is sitting in the seat that is meant for Macbeth. Now, this is really important for a few reasons. So, here's a place reserved, so where is really important. Now, you don't have to remember these quotes. If this comes up in the exam, if this is printed for you, then you can use the quotes. But if it's not, what you need to remember is that Banquo's ghost in Macbeth's chair could be symbolic. So remember, so when it's symbolic, it stands for something else. So it could be symbolic of Macbeth's worry that Banquo's sons will take the throne from him. Now, if you're not sure why I'm saying that, then I'm going to explain it, but I'm not going to write it down. You might write it down, but I'm not going to write it down. So basically, Banquo is sat in the chair that is reserved for Macbeth. So Macbeth thinks that that's his place. And everyone else thinks it's Macbeth's place. But actually, what happens is Banquo's ghost goes in and actually takes the chair. Now, the whole point of that becomes it becomes a way for Shakespeare to sort of almost symbolise like a throne. So Macbeth thinks he has the throne all to himself, but actually the ghost of Banquo is always there reminding him that he can't keep hold of that throne because the witches have told him that he'll be king, but his sons won't be, that Banquo's sons will be king instead. So you can see there where Macbeth's quite a paranoid person. And that's what that could symbolise. Now then Macbeth says, "Thou canst not say I did it, never shake thy gory locks at me." Basically meaning that Banquo's ghost is quite gory. Now if we look at that adjective, again it's sort of connoting the brutality of his death. So it shows how brutal Banquo's death was. And that's a way for Shakespeare to show or emphasise why Macbeth feels guilt. Okay, so then we move on to Ross. "Gentlemen, rise. His Highness is not well," and Lady Macbeth joins. Now here is where Lady Macbeth, she often saves Macbeth, doesn't she? She often saves Macbeth from suspicion. So then we see that Lady Macbeth's obviously quite a key character for Macbeth. Without her, he would have been in a lot of trouble a lot sooner. So she saves Macbeth from suspicion. So Lady Macbeth says, "Sit, worthy friends, my lord is often thus, and hath been from his youth. So don't worry, this is something weird he's done ever since he was a child. Pray you keep seat. The fit is momentary. Upon a thought he will again be well. If much you note him, you shall offend him and extend his passion. Feed and regard him not." Now, she's telling everyone, I need you to completely and utterly ignore my husband. Now, she's trying to say, oh, you know, he's acted like this since he was a child. But actually, it's kind of showing that Macbeth's not very stable. That they're kind of starting to see Macbeth's not very stable. Now, look again here where she says to Macbeth, "Are you a man?" So once again, she questions his masculinity. She emasculates him. And she really sort of makes him insecure. Okay, so we can see why he's insecure and why he is so paranoid about not being king anymore, because he feels manly, he feels in control finally, and if that's taken away from him, then that's where we will notice that Macbeth will sort of, you know, really struggle, and he has been struggling this whole time. And then Macbeth actually answers her back and says, "I and a bold one that dare look on that which might appall the devil." So here we actually look at how Macbeth is sort of fooling himself into thinking he's strong. So he's trying to be as masculine as he possibly can. And let's be honest, it's not really working very well, is it? So then he says, which might appall the devil. So he's saying that actually I'm looking at things that even the devil wouldn't be able to look at. And Lady Macbeth says, "Oh, proper stuff. This is the very painting of your fear. This is the air-drawn dagger which you said led you to Duncan." So basically, what she's pointing out here is that Macbeth is weak and unstable. And she knows this. She knows he's weak and unstable. She acknowledges his madness. And then she says, oh, these flaws and starts, impostors to true fear, would well become a woman's story at a winter's fire, authorised by her grandam. So actually what she's saying is that you're scared by a tale or a story that's actually more at place being told by women. So once again, would be well become a woman's story at a winter's fire. So once again, she's using this to symbolize his femininity. So she's again making him look like he's feminine. And she's trying to make him feel like less of a man. So again, we would sort of link that to being emasculation. So she's emasculating him. So she emasculates Macbeth. Shame itself. Why do you make such faces when all's done? You look but on a stool. So again, she's saying. So she's ashamed of him. And that's what she's saying. You're looking at a stool. You're looking at something someone sits on, and she says it's shame itself. So again, it kind of goes back. It's very circular in its structure, where we've come all this way, but actually we're going back to the very beginning, where when they're just about to kill Duncan, and actually Lady Macbeth says, "I would shame to wear a heart so white." So she is constantly ashamed of her husband here. And you might want to make a note of that yourself if you don't think you would remember that kind of point. So Macbeth says, "Prithee, see there, behold, look, lo, how say you to Ghost? Why, what care I? If thou canst nod, speak too. If carnal houses in our graves must send those that we bury back, our monuments shall be the moors of kites." So basically saying, I buried you. Why have you come back? Basically, he's saying, you should be gone, but you're still here. Now look at how he's now talking to the ghost as well. So we can see this is sort of like foreshadowing his madness, or his ultimate and complete madness. Foreshadowing that he's gone completely mad himself. And Lady Macbeth actually says, "What, quite unmanned in folly?" So again, she's again saying he's unmanned. She's again challenging his masculinity. She's again emasculating him. Look at how that keeps coming up. She keeps making him feel like less of a man. And that a lot of people argue that that's one thing that pushes Macbeth to do what he does, because he's so hell-bent and obsessed with actually proving himself. And Macbeth says, "If I stand here, I saw him. Fee for shame." So again, she's very, very ashamed of him. So this is where we start to get our grade 9 essays there. We start to argue, who's responsible for Macbeth's downfall? And maybe we look at a couple of different reasons. Is Macbeth responsible for his own downfall because this whole time he had free will? Or is it actually Lady Macbeth responsible for Macbeth's downfall because the entire time she's been treating him this way? And she's been emasculating him. She's made him paranoid. She's made him ashamed. She has made him insecure. And that's what's causing him to do this. So he says, "Blood hath been shed ere now in the golden time, ere humane statute purged the gentle wheel." So you can read it over here. "There was bloodshed before now in the olden days, before law and order had regulated the nation. So, and since too, murders have been performed too terrible for the ear. The time has been that when the brains were out, the man would die, and there an end. But now they rise again with 20 mortal murders on their crowns, and push us from our stalls. This is more strange than such a murder is." So, actually, what he says is here, with 20 mortal murders on their crowns, he's talking about Banquo has sort of like 20 gashes in his head. So again, it's quite brutal, and it does invoke guilt. So to invoke something means to call it up. So it does invoke guilt here. That's the point. So Macbeth says, I do forget, do not muse at me, Lady Macbeth says, my worthy lord, your noble friends do lack you. I do forget, do not muse at me, my most worthy friends. I have a strange infirmity which is nothing to those that know me. Come, love, and health to all. Then I'll sit down, give me some wine, fill full. So there's a very large contrast here. So there's a contrast between there's a contrast that comes about in a moment. So it comes about very quickly. This is Macbeth trying to be deceptive. So that's Macbeth's attempt to be very, very deceptive. So he's trying... Ooh, hit the stand, sorry. So he's trying to be deceptive. And it actually shows that he has gone mad, because he's acting one way 1 second, then another way another second. He's very mad, he's very unstable. Enter the Ghost of Banquo. I drink to the general joy of the whole table, and to our dear friend Banquo, whom we miss. Would he were here. To all and him we thirst, and all to all. Now, look again, you've got that idea of deception. He knows Banquo's dead. There's a lot of dramatic irony here. We start to see that Macbeth is desperately trying to claw his way back. It does show a lot of desperation here. He's desperate to make himself appear as a good leader. The Lord say our duties in the pledge. Avaunt and quit my sight. Let the earth hide thee. Thy bones are marrowless. Thy blood is cold. Thou hast no speculation in those eyes which thou dost glare with. So he's talking to the ghost again. So he's going between. So he switches his thoughts and who he is talking to. Very quickly, which again shows his madness. So it shows that he's gone very mad here. He talks about thy bones are marrowless, thy blood is cold. He's making it clear here that Banquo is a corpse. Again, it's quite a frightening image, and it kind of shows us that if Macbeth is like imagining this scary image, then actually he has a very unstable mindset, because he's focusing on the blood and the gore, and perhaps that shows that he feels quite a lot of guilt there, which again you might want to write down. Make sure that you're using all the required space. I just can't write in these little gaps, because otherwise I'd have to change the camera angle, and I can't at the moment because I already keep knocking the stand. So Macbeth then says, think of this good Lady Macbeth says, think of this good peers as just a thing of custom, 'tis no other, only it spoils the pleasure of the time. So again, Lady Macbeth is saving Macbeth from suspicion. So we could again argue that would Macbeth have gotten this far without Lady Macbeth? She plays a key role in keeping him out of danger. And then later on, actually, you notice that when Lady Macbeth goes mad, that's when Macbeth dies. So it's quite interesting because there's no one there to save him anymore. Macbeth says, what man dare I dare? So I dare do everything. Approach thou like a rugged Russian bear, the armed rhinoceros, or the Hirson tiger. Take any shape but that, and my firm nerves shall never tremble. So actually, you can see here he's talking about the bear, the rhinoceros, the tiger. So he believes he believes himself to be a strong predator. So he sees himself as a very, very strong predatory force. He could take on a bear, or a tiger, or a rhino, but take any shape but that. So this is where we can see that guilt makes him weak. So I can stand anything else, but I can't stand the form you've taken. So guilt definitely makes him weak. because he can't even stand to look at the ghost of Banquo. Or be alive again, and dare me to the desert with thy sword. If trembling I inhabit then, protest me the baby of a girl. Hence horrible shadow, unreal mockery hence. So again, he's talking about, protest me the baby of a girl, meaning that he's almost like a doll. So again, he's emasculating himself. So we can see here where he's sort of talking about himself like he is basically a doll or a girl's toy, and so it really does show that he's very, very, very insecure, and that's a big issue there with Macbeth insecurity. So exit the Ghost of Banquo. So the Ghost of Banquo leaves. Why so being gone? I am a man again. Pray you sit still. So again, he's saying like when he was here, I wasn't a man. I wasn't strong. So again, it's Macbeth emasculating himself. Lady Macbeth says, you have displaced the mirth, broke the good meeting with the most admired disorder. So again, she's ashamed of him. So she's quite ashamed of him and his behaviour. So again, it does show that Lady Macbeth doesn't really particularly value her husband. Macbeth says, can such things be and overcome us like the summer's cloud without our special wonder? You make me strange even to the disposition that I owe, when now I think you can behold such sights and keep the natural ruby of your cheeks when mine is blanched with fear. Meaning that you're still blushing, your face still has colour in it, but blanched actually means white. So he's saying here, I've gone white with fear. So I just don't feel like I'm myself anymore. And that's what he's saying there. You make me strange. So Macbeth is losing his identity. Now that's really interesting. So he feels like he's losing his identity. Now, in terms of the audience, we can see this too. So the audience sees this as well. As he was originally meant to be a strong and, and brave warrior. So he was a strong and brave warrior when we first met him, and now he's become something weak. And so we can kind of see where he is losing his identity at this point in the play. Ross says, what sights, my lord? So you will see here that Macbeth is starting to arouse suspicion. So what we could say is that his behaviour causes suspicion. I'm going to start writing over here. His behaviour causes suspicion, and what we would say here is that actually in his behaviour causing suspicion, Macbeth is building the way for his own destruction. Now, there's a different way you can phrase that. You could say he's the architect of his own destruction, like he's making it, or he's paving the way for his own destruction, but he's building the way, he's forcing the way for his own destruction. He's causing people to be suspicious of him, okay? No one else is doing it right now. Macbeth is to blame. Lady Macbeth says, I pray you speak not. He grows worse and worse. Questions enrage him at once. Good night. Stand not upon the order of your going, but go at once. Again, we've already written down, this is Lady Macbeth trying to save him. Lennox says, good night, and better health attend his majesty. Lady Macbeth says, a kind good night to all. So she saves it again. She saves him again. And they all leave. It will have blood, they say. Blood will have blood. So here we can see, once again, Macbeth fears revenge. So when he says blood will have blood, that actually means it's kind of like a metaphor now that if you have hurt someone, someone will hurt you. It's like an eye for an eye in the Bible. Oh, I've smudged that. Oops. And And so that's what he's saying here. And he says, stones have been known to move and trees to speak. Augurs and understood relations have by magpies and troughs and rooks brought forth the secretest man of blood. What is the night? He talks about magpies and jackdaws and rooks have given omens and signs, have revealed the most hidden secret murders by means of talking birds. So again, he's now talking about he's talking about his worry that his secrets will be revealed, and he's talking about them in the most ridiculous ways, about birds talking. So again, we can see there where Macbeth is a very paranoid individual. Lady Macbeth says almost... Oh, sorry. And then Macbeth actually asks, what is the night? And Lady Macbeth says almost at odds with the morning. Which is which. So they're talking here about the day and the night. So she's saying it's partly nighttime, it's partly morning, and you know, no one can say which is which. And actually this could also symbolize the uncertainty of whether Macbeth can be good again. So has he lost it all? So remember when I said to you, there's quite a recurring sort of motif, a recurring image of night and day. Night is evil, day is good. You know, so night and morning. We can't tell which is which anymore. We can't tell what's good. We can't tell what's evil. So it could symbolise the uncertainty. Can Macbeth ever be good again? Can he ever redeem himself? And Macbeth says, how sayest thou that Macduff denies his person at our great bidding? So he actually talks about Macduff. Macduff has refused to come to the banquet. So he's quite offended. Like, Macbeth is very, very offended here. Lady Macbeth says, did you send him, sir? Did you send for him? I hear it, by the way, but I will send. So there's not a one of them, but in his house I keep a servant feed. So I am bribing this servant to give me information about Macduff. So again, you can see here, he's very paranoid. He's now got spies in places. He's a very paranoid person. And betimes I will to the weird sisters, more shall they speak. So look at how Macbeth is talking about going to the witches again. So he becomes reliant on the witches. And that really shows that Macbeth has transitioned fully into evil. He relies on evil himself. So again, it's showing us that Macbeth's a very, very negative person. For now I am bent to know by the worst means the worst for mine own good. All causes shall give away. I am in blood, stepped in so far that should I wade no more, returning were as tedious as to go over. Now this is a really important metaphor. What he's saying here is that, do you know what? I have killed so many that I've waded into blood. It's almost like I'm standing in a river of blood. So that's what he's saying here. The metaphor of a river of blood. And what he's saying in returning as were as tedious as to go over. So basically he has resolved and he has decided, that's what it means to resolve to do something. He has resolved to carry on murdering because he sees no way back. You know, it's just going to be as much trouble for me as to keep going as it is to go back. As he sees no easy way out of this. And again, that really does foreshadow his downfall, because there's only so far you can go until you've, you know, killed everyone, really. So it does foreshadow his downfall. Strange things I have in head that will to hand, which must be acted ere they may be scanned. So I need to start doing things before I think about them, which again foreshadows his downfall, because that is literally the worst decision that any one person could make. He will no longer think his actions through. And we all know that when you don't think your actions through, that's when absolutely terrible things happen. So he's not thinking them through. Lady Macbeth says, you lack the season of all nature's sleep, so you just need to sleep. And Macbeth says, come, will to sleep. My strange and self-abuse is the initiate fear that wants hard use. We are yet but young indeed. So it's only because we're inexperienced that I'm feeling this. There's no other reason. So he really, really dismisses it. Okay, so the next part we're going to look at is when Macbeth becomes really, really reliant on the witches. I realise this is quite a long video, so well done for sticking with me. Make sure you've made all these notes that you need to. Any notes that you don't understand by themselves, make sure you've paused the video, you've gone back and you've just written in anything that I've said as I've been explaining it that you're missing, okay? So the whole point of this scene is really to show us that Lady Macbeth is trying to take control, but Macbeth has just gone too mad. He is now completely out of control.